a pregnant woman. When she was about to find a place to hide and give birth, a sharp sword suddenly attacked. The woman quickly stood up to fight, but every time she hit hard, the child in her belly reacted. If this continued, both mother and child would only have one way forward, so she had to defeat her opponent in one direction. She quickly seized the opportunity to defeat her enemy. However, as soon as she solved the guy in front of her, two more people appeared behind her. She reacted quickly, stabbed the long spear into the enemy, then threw the spear to defeat another 10 meters away. Unexpectedly, one enemy after another kept talking non-stop. In order to survive, the woman had no choice but to charge forward and fight. With her superior fighting power, she fought 3 people alone without being at a disadvantage. At first, the woman rotated to deal with 3 people for 2 rounds. Then she suddenly attacked and defeated one enemy. But at this moment, she showed signs of being about to give birth. The other 2 saw this and quickly rushed to attack. She suppressed her pain and quickly took down one with just 1 strike. The other one was no more than 2 strikes. But when she was about to take down the last enemy, her sudden stomachache gave the enemy an opportunity to counterattack. He retaliated by stabbing her in the side. The woman was in so much pain that she fainted, but for the sake of the child in her womb, she endured it. Fortunately, she successfully counter-killed the last enemy. Then she tried her best to crawl behind a rock and tear her clothes, using her last bit of strength to give birth. Until the last moment of her life, she still did not expect that the child she gave birth to was the dragon reborn in legend. Luz, also known as Dragon, sacrificed his life 3,000 years ago to seal the Dark One. Now the Dark One is about to awaken again, and the only one who can stop it is this newborn baby. Moraine and Lan Mandragoran have always been searching for information about the Dragon Reborn. Moraine is tasked with maintaining order in the world, and Lan Mandragoran must protect her from harm. The two sides have an unbreakable pact. Hearing that the Dragon Reborn has grown up and lives in 2 rivers, the two of them continue their search. This place is as beautiful as a painting. Today is Egwene's coming-of-age day. Everyone in the village is congratulating her. However, the weather outside is a sign of something ominous. Then, a mysterious person enters the tavern, causing everyone to immediately become tense. The person who came is none other than Lan Mandragoran and Moraine are looking for the dragon. Moraine has brought out the giant snake symbol that symbolizes her identity as an Aes Sedai, which is honored for fighting to protect the world. So the innkeeper arranged a first-class room for them, but the villagers behind them were whispering because Moraine's appearance signaled a big change in the village. Sure enough, the next day, Lan Mandragoran discovered a pile of goat carcasses arranged in a comma shape. This showed that the Dark One had begun to act. Lan Mandragoran quickly returned to inform Moraine. Meanwhile, Moraine was still observing 4 people who could be Dragon Reborn. The first was Egwene, a noble-hearted girl. The second was Rand, who lived in the mountains with his father. Rand also had feelings for Egwene. The third was Perrin, a burly blacksmith. The fourth was Matt, a gambler. However, there were few clues about Dragon Reborn, so Moraine did not know who the real Dragon Reborn was. That night, the villagers gathered to celebrate the spring festival. While Egwene was having fun, the boy across from her was suddenly stabbed through the chest by a sharp object. Soon after, countless monsters appeared, causing the villagers to panic and run away. But the monsters did not spare them. In the eyes of the monsters, these villagers were nothing more than a bunch of bugs. In the chaos, Nynaeve led Egwene to escape, but they were still discovered by a monster. With nowhere to run, Nynaeve had no choice but to pull out a fruit knife and fight, but she was no match for the monster. The two were quickly cornered. At the critical moment, a bolt of lightning suddenly struck the monster. It turned out that Moraine and Lan Mandragoran had saved the two. After that, Moraine also used magic to attack. The shocking and terrifying energy lit up the sky. Immediately after, countless bolts of lightning struck down, causing the monsters in the surrounding area to turn into dust. However, when Moraine focused on casting magic, she could not be interrupted, and at this time, she needed Lan Mandragoran's protection. After that, the two of them worked together to destroy countless enemies. The villagers also raised their spirits and joined forces to destroy a monster. At the same time, Rand and his father, who lived on the mountain, were also attacked. In the moment of danger, the father pulled out an extraordinary sword to fight. Rand never knew that his father had such an ability. In the end, the two of them successfully destroyed the monster. While Nynaeve was saving others, she was ambushed by a monster. Egwene had no choice but to watch Nynaeve being dragged away helplessly. On this side, Moraine was also stabbed in the shoulder by a monster while casting a spell, putting the villagers at a disadvantage. The monster's morale increased, and they charged straight at Moraine. Seeing this, Moraine could only endure the pain and deliver the finishing blow. She used the bricks of the house as weapons. With great strength, she destroyed each monster. When the last monster was defeated, Moraine and the house collapsed. Lan Mandragoran also immediately went to protect Moraine. Finally, the long war ended. Although Moraine and everyone else won, the price was too high. The entire village was almost destroyed. Moiraine used her magic to heal Rand's father. But Rand not only did not thank Moiraine, he also suspected that Moraine's appearance had brought about this disaster. Moiraine told everyone that the monster was a minion of the Dark One. If the Dark One wanted to unseal it, he could only ask the dragon, and the dragon reborn was in one of the four of them. Therefore, it was clear that the monster was targeting Rand's group. Before the group could verify the credibility of Moraine's words, the roar of the demons rang out again. A large army of monsters had approached the village. Moiraine told the four to quickly pack up and go with her to distract the monster. Otherwise, the village would be severely damaged again. The four of them had lived in two rivers since they were young, so they did not dare to risk the lives of their families and friends. So they had no choice but to follow Moiraine. They did not know what they would face ahead, but they knew that the coming days would certainly be filled with danger. In order to help the leader capture the legendary dragon reborn, the monsters worked from morning to night. Finally, they had cornered their target at the ferry. Moiraine knew that monsters were afraid of deep water, so she paid double the price for the old man to row them to the other side. Hearing the demons roar from afar, everyone did not dare to delay. When the boat had just gone a few meters, the monsters appeared at the ferry. Their numbers were large, and they quickly surrounded the riverbank. They sat on the boat in fear. The monsters saw that their target was about to be captured, but they could only scream in pain. Suddenly, an eyeless monster on a horse appeared. That was the leader of the demons, a high-ranking servant of the Dark One called the Faceless One. To stop the monsters from chasing Lan Mandragoran, cut the rope. Then, Moiraine used magic to pull the boat into the abyss to crush it. But the boatman did not listen to everyone's advice and jumped into the river because he wanted to go back to find his family. However, Moraine's magic was complete, so she could not take it back. So they could only watch the boatman get caught in the whirlpool with the boat. In the end, it completely disappeared on the lake surface. Moiraine was also very heartbroken about this, but they had to continue moving forward because the monsters would not stop. When they reached Moraine's territory, the four candidates of Dragon Reborn were considered safe. During the rest period, Moiraine used magical energy to help the horse regain its strength. But unfortunately, Moiraine could only heal others, but not herself. So the more seriously injured Moiraine was, the weaker she became. However, Moiraine still went to Egwene at night because she could feel the difference from Egwene. After examining her, Moiraine discovered that Egwene indeed possessed great intellectual power. But this alone was not enough to prove that Egwene was Dragon Reborn. Moiraine also told Egwene to take advantage of this power because it would definitely be useful to her in the future. Late at night, Rand suddenly felt like something was stuck in his throat, so he immediately reached out and pulled it out. Unexpectedly, Rand pulled out a bat. The next scene really scared him. It turned out that it was all just a dream, but the strange thing was that there really was a bat here. Rand quickly looked for the other three. Unexpectedly, they also had the same dream. Rand thought that all this was definitely Moiraine's doing, but she thought that this dream was not a good omen, so they should leave this place immediately. However, Lan Mandragoran, who had been scouting, returned with bad news that the White Cloaks had ahead them. The White Cloaks hated the Aes Sedai, who used magic, especially the one who claimed to be Valda's son. Valda enjoyed torturing and killing Aes Sedai, and collected their giant snake rings as trophies. Now, Valda's son was not about to let Moiraine go. He personally searched her to see if she had hidden the giant snake ring. Fortunately, Moiraine had already given the ring to Lan Mandragoran for safekeeping, so she was out of danger. Finding nothing, the White Cloaks had no choice but to let them go. The group continued east. It was not until evening that they decided to stop and rest. However, Perrin, who was in charge of fetching water, was in danger. While Perrin was examining the wound on his leg from the monster, a pack of hungry wolves suddenly appeared behind him. Perrin was so scared that he didn't dare to move. What was worse was that the wound on Perrin's leg kept bleeding. This was like a fatal attraction to the wolves. At this time, the leader wolf slowly walked towards Perrin. After staring at Perrin for a while, the leader wolf licked Perrin's wound. The strange thing was that it didn't harm Perrin, but instead led the pack away quickly, leaving Perrin with a face full of astonishment. When Perrin returned, it was already dark. Moiraine couldn't bear it any longer and fainted. But what was worse was that the Faceless had found the group. It commanded countless monsters to launch an attack. Without much time to think, the group hurriedly fled. Seeing the monster getting closer and closer, the horse suddenly stopped. It refused to move forward. There was something even more terrifying ahead. Everyone raised their heads and saw a crack in the giant city wall before them. That was the terrifying Dark Capital. Even monsters feared this evil power. In order to survive, Lan Mandragoran had to lead the group into the city. Inside, the space was terrifyingly quiet. Not a single bird chirped, and there were traces of black burns everywhere, but one could still see its original prosperity. After that, Lan Mandragoran told the history of the Dark Capital. During the war with monsters, this city did not want to help other cities, so it built tall walls. But for some unknown reason, all living creatures in this city mysteriously disappeared overnight. People said this was a cursed city, and the evil power came from the center of the city. Lanmandragoran then told everyone not to touch anything here, but there were people who did not listen. Early in the morning, Matt was awakened by a mysterious voice. He followed the call and suddenly saw a figure passing by. When he followed, he only saw a chest. It seemed that something in the chest was calling Matt. Without thinking, he opened it. Inside was a dagger with a ruby. Then the mysterious voice continued to persuade Matt to pull out the blade. This action brought harm to everyone. The first victim was a horse. A black shadow covered it in the blink of an eye, taking its life. Immediately, a healthy horse became a pile of ashes. The other horses saw this and quickly ran away. The remaining people heard the noise and went out to check, but the black shadow quickly attacked them. The black shadow separated these four people. The speed of the darkness spread so fast that in just a moment, it almost covered the entire city. At this time, Lanmandragoran had no other choice, so he could only ride his horse out of the city with Moiraine. Rand and Matt also escaped through a small path. The darkness seemed to have some kind of limit, so it could not leave the city. Meanwhile, Egwene and Perrin, in a critical situation, immediately ran up the city wall. However, that thing quickly caught up with them. In the moment of life and death, the two decided to jump down from the hundreds of meters high city wall without thinking. Fortunately, there was a river below, so the two of them escaped. However, now they could not find each other. They were forced to split into three small groups to continue moving forward. While Lanmandragoran was giving Moiraine water, suddenly a knife was held to his neck. It turned out to be Nynaeve, who had just escaped death. It turned out that after being dragged for 2 days, Nynaeve thought that she was about to become the demon's food. But these monsters were not in a hurry to eat her, but they wanted to nibble on a few other little demons as an appetizer before the main meal. Taking that opportunity, Nynaeve tried to escape. She accidentally ran into a cave. Seeing the monster's silhouette appeared at cave entrance, Nynaeve had no choice but to sneak into the lake. But this monster had been hungry for 2 days, so it could not give up easily. He approached the lake and searched carefully. Nynaeve saw this and gently adjusted her position, but even the slightest noise could not escape the monster's senses. But when he reached the lake, he could no longer see Nynaeve's silhouette, so he decided to dive into the water to search for her himself. However, Nynaeve was not someone who could be bullied easily. She quickly swam around behind the monster, pulled out her knife, and stabbed it hard into its heart. As a pool of blood spread, Nynaeve also jumped out of the water. After experiencing life and death, she felt stronger than ever. So she followed the trail to Moiraine and Lanmandragoran. From Lanmandragoran's story, she learned that her 4 friends were lost. With no other choice, Nynaeve had to help Moiraine heal first. Then she continued to search for Egwene's group. With Nynaeve's help, Moiraine finally regained consciousness. To fully recover, she still needed the power of 2 Aes Sedai. Fortunately, they met Liandrin, a powerful Aes Sedai. Liandrin had captured a man who called himself Dragon Reborn, named Loghain. Such men were considered dangerous by the Aes Sedai. Many years ago, the Dark One used evil power to pollute magic, making it easy for magic users to lose control and harm those close to them. Therefore, Loghain was escorted to the White Tower for trial. Liandrin then brought Moiraine and the other 2 back to the camp. Under Karain's treatment, Moiraine's injuries were healed. As soon as Moiraine recovered, she went to see Loghain. The power within Loghain was stronger than any man before. It took 2 Aes Sedai to simultaneously cast magic to restrain him, but they never thought that someone as powerful as Loghain could be captured so easily. It turned out that it was all Loghain's plan. He pretended to be captured, but in reality, he wanted to destroy the entire camp. Now the opportunity was right. With just one look, Loghain sent the 2 Aes Sedai flying. Then he easily opened the iron cage with his dark power. At the same time, the outside of the camp was also attacked by countless arrows flying from the sky. The Aes Sedai quickly joined forces to control these arrows. When Loghain's army appeared, they would reverse the arrows and shoot at the enemy. Although the enemy army was large, the Moiraine's power was still much superior. Very quickly, most of the enemy army was destroyed. On the other side, Moiraine also found Loghain. She mocked Loghain that he would soon be swallowed by the evil power inside. Loghain did not care about Moiraine's mockery. At this moment, Karain suddenly attacked Loghain from behind. The 3 of them joined forces again to capture Loghain again, but the dark power in his body quickly turned into a hidden weapon to attack the 3 of them. To protect the remaining 2, Karain created a shield to protect them, but she was hit by the hidden weapon. She quickly died. Only then did everyone arrive. Seeing her master lying on the ground, Stepin could not control his emotions and vented his anger on Loghain. But when the axe swung down, the dark power also found a way out. It finally shattered the axe and destroyed everyone present. Nynaeve was lucky to escape because she was standing in the corner. Over the past few days, Nynaeve had developed feelings for Lanmandragoran. At this moment, seeing the man she loved fall in pain, blood blood flowing into a large pool. Nynaeve also released a huge fairy power. This power quickly healed those on the brink of death. Even Logain, who thought he was strong, found it unbelievable. Seeing this, the Aes Sedai quickly focused their power on Leandrin. The situation was so urgent that they could not wait to bring Logain to the White Tower for trial. They had to immediately unite to destroy Logain. When the dark power was withdrawn, the man who once possessed unlimited power shed tears. It was because of his greed and thirst for power that he was drawn into this evil power. Logain would now return to being a normal person, but the dead would never return. The survivors buried the warriors with the highest honors. Then, they continued on their journey back to the White Tower. At that moment, Lan Mandragoran was anxious, uncertain whether the four young ones were still alive. Since Rand and Mat had separated, the two had been making their still toward the White Tower. The two of them continued to move towards the White Tower. They accidentally wandered into a strange village where sinners were hung in iron cages until their bodies were dried. Mat was worried about the gem on waste. At night, when no one was around, Mat sneaked back to the corpse, but he did not realize that someone was approaching from behind. It turned out to be an old man in the village, but he was not a normal person. Mat suddenly became tense, but the old man just wanted the dead to rest in peace. When the old man knew that Mat came for the gem, the old man told Mat to quickly finish his work, and then they buried the corpse together. Meanwhile, Rand was chatting with the tavern owner. Seeing that the atmosphere had reached its peak, the owner wanted to give Rand a passionate kiss, but he refused. Angry at being rejected, the landlady drew her sword. She had known long ago that Rand and Mat were candidates for the position of Dragon Reborn, so she wanted to capture them both to gain merit. Since she had sold her soul to Faceless a long time ago, Rand knew that he was no match for her, so he had to put his hope on the door. She told Rand not to waste his energy. This wooden door could not be broken down even by 3 people like him. Rand did not believe it and continued to charge at the door. Unexpectedly, he broke it down. Rand had just escaped when he met Mat. Mat did not know what happened, so he could only run after Rand. But the landlady was familiar with the terrain of the village, so she quickly blocked the two of them. She told them to surrender obediently because she had informed Faceless. Today, even if they grew wings, they would not be able to escape. However, before she could finish her sentence, a spear pierced her throat, causing her to fall. It turned out that the old man had saved them. He then told the two to follow him and leave this place and go to the White Tower. Having no other choice, the two had to listen to him. After a day of running, at night they asked to stay at a farmer's house. However, Mat felt something was wrong. He only saw a dark stream enter his mouth. At that moment, the farmer's little daughter found Mat and gave him a piece of bread. Mat's face showed a rare gentleness because the girl reminded him of his 2 younger sisters. Hearing this, the girl gave Mat a doll to keep him company. But Mat would do something he would regret for the rest of his life. When Rand and the old man found Mat, it was too late. The whole farmer's family was lying in a pool of blood, and Mat had a lifeless expression, obviously controlled by some kind of power. Both looked in the direction Mat pointed and saw the figure of Faceless. The old man told Rand to take Mat away while he stayed to deal with Faceless. After going outside, Mat regained consciousness. When he saw the scene before his eyes, he could not believe that he had killed the little girl's entire family. This became a lifelong pain for Mat. A month later, the two arrived at the White Tower. At the same time, Egwene and Perrin also followed a caravan of merchants near the White Tower. Unfortunately, the two encountered the White Cloaks and Valda's son. They recognized the two. He ordered his subordinates to take both of them to his camp. After that, he ordered Egwene to be cleaned and tied to a chair to await his judgment. He assumed that Egwene was an Aes Sedai and Perrin was her protector. To force Egwene to admit that she had magic, Valda's son turned to torture Perrin, carving wounds on his back with a knife. Egwene could not bear to see her friend being tortured, so she began to try to control her power. But she was not a real mage, so that little power could not hurt Valda's son. On the contrary, he mocked her. Perrin took the opportunity to unleash his power. His eyes were full of wildness. Outside the tent, the howling of wolves rang out. Seeing the ferocious pack of wolves approaching, Valda's son panicked. Egwene took the opportunity to stab him in the shoulder with a knife until he could no longer harm her. Then, both of them ran out of the tent, only to find the outside surrounded by wolves. One wolf blocked their way, but it only howled a few times before going to help the others. Remembering the time the wolf leader licked his wound, Perrin speculated that he had the ability to control the wolves. The two then successfully escaped to the White Tower. The next day, Moraine received news from the people in the area, and she immediately went to where the two were. Seeing Perrin fainted from his severe injuries, she arranged for him to be treated with magic. Egwene asked if there was any news about Rand and Mat. Moraine replied that they had not been found yet. But in fact, Moraine lied, because 2 days ago, Moraine had met Rand and Mat. At that time, Mat was no longer conscious, and soon he would be like Logain, completely consumed by the dark power. The cause of all this was the demon knife that Matt had secretly taken from the dark capital. Fortunately, Moraine discovered it and used magic to draw the dark power out of Matt's mouth. Finally, Moraine transferred it back to the demon knife. When the ritual was completed, Egwene quickly took the knife back. This event made Rand finally trust Moraine completely. However, Moraine reminded Rand to keep an eye on Matt because Matt had been invaded by the dark power for too long, so there might be more surprises. Now that everyone had safely arrived at the White Tower, Moraine prepared to carry out the next step in her plan. Moraine planned to take all four of them, along with Nynaeve, to the Eye of the World, which was considered the Dark One's prison. Of the five, Dragon Reborn would defeat the Dark One there, but those who stood between Dragon Reborn and the Dark One would die instantly. Therefore, anyone who was not Dragon Reborn would be sacrificed. Of course, Moraine did not say the last two words. When everyone was ready, Moraine began to use magic to open the portal. This was the fastest way to the Eye of the World. Each step on this path was equivalent to 160 kilometers in the real world. Moraine stepped in first. The others followed. However, Matt hesitated because he did not want to risk his life. Despite comrades' repeated calls, Matt did not change his mind until the gate closed completely. This was something no one expected. Nynaeve begged Moraine to reopen the gate, but Moraine said that it was Matt's decision. Loyal also said that the gate could not be reopened because magic could not be used in the transdimensional path, otherwise it would attract the Dark One's attention. At that time, everyone had only one path to death. They had no choice but to continue following Moraine. On the dark path, everyone had to be very careful. Otherwise, if they took just one wrong step, they would fall into the endless abyss. After a few minutes, Perrin, with his animal vision, suddenly reminded them that there was something ahead. It turned out to be a stone pillar. However, the content on the stone pillar had been intentionally destroyed by someone. Moraine and Lan Mandragoran immediately realized that something was following them. Loyal needed time to decipher the stone tablet, so Moraine told everyone to rest in place. But while everyone was sleeping, Egwene heard strange sounds. It was the appearance of a monster. But Egwene accidentally released her power, causing the monster to immediately fall into the bottomless abyss. Egwene felt regret for accidentally using her power. At the same time, Machine Shin followed the sound and came. The group had no choice but to head towards the nearest gate. No one realized that a dark figure was following them. When they reached the gate, Machine Shin was also near. Everyone quickly extinguished all the lights, because in the dark, people are more likely to lose their minds. Soon, Machine Shin began to whisper into each person's hand. Its voice was full of ghosts, trying to make them lose their minds. When she heard the words that she would lose everyone, Nynaeve completely exploded. Nynaeve once again summoned a powerful force that enveloped everyone within it. Moraine took the opportunity to open the portal, and the group finally escaped the portal without any danger. Rand and Perrin were still upset by Machine Shin's whispers. Moraine comforted them not to think too much because their demonic words were not trustworthy. However, due to a series of incidents, they did not reach the Eye of the World immediately. Instead, they went to Fal Dara, the last defense against the monsters. Fortunately, this place was only a day's journey from the Eye of the World. This was also the second home of Lan Mandragoran, so they were allowed to stay for the night. When they reached the main hall, Moraine wanted to warn the Border Lord about the appearance of monsters, but the smug lord would not listen. He believed that Fal Dara could stop any enemy who wanted to invade. It was not until Moraine said that the Dark One had begun using the portal to move his army that the Lord became more serious. He then ordered the portal to be guarded closely. At that moment, a man came out of the portal, and it was Padan Fain, who often came to Two Rivers to sell goods. But his true identity was someone else, a human serving the Dark One. That was why Padan Fain persisted in coming to the village every year, even though only Matt bought goods. Over the years, he had followed the 4 Dragon Reborn candidates. Now, he had followed them to the border and brought with him a deadly danger. That night, Rand went to Moraine and confessed the truth to her. Rand knew he was the Dragon Reborn. When he escaped from the tavern, he used his special power to open the monster's door. During the journey through the portal, he was the one who defeated the monster. Machine Shin's words struck Rand deep in the heart. Even though Rand knew the truth, he still went to the prophet hoping to hear a negative answer. Unfortunately, the result disappointed him. The prophet said that when she was a child, she met a man holding documents from the archives, and that man was Rand's adoptive father. Rand's adoptive father found a woman in labor on the battlefield who was the strong female warrior who appeared in the beginning of the video. Instead of killing the woman, he helped her give birth. But after the child was born, she also died, and the kind man decided to raise the child. That was Rand's miraculous birth. In order to protect her comrades, Rand quietly set out with Moraine to find the Dark One. The two had to travel through the land of the elves to reach the Dark One's prison in the Eye of the World. These goblins looked harmless, but in fact they would kill everyone. If they were not careful, the two would become their food. An hour later, Moraine suggested resting to conserve their strength. However, the goblin took the opportunity to attack Rand, causing him to wake up with a start. But before he could regain his composure, Moraine was attacked by the Dark One, who breathed fire from his mouth while talking. Rand quickly shot an arrow into the Dark One's eye, but the Dark One didn't care and just smiled faintly. After swallowing the arrow, he appeared in human form. The Dark One suggested that Rand cooperate to rebuild the world order according to their wishes. However, Rand believed that this was just a trick because the Dark One was still imprisoned in the prison and couldn't get out. So Rand decided to hurt himself to wake up, but when Rand woke up, everything happened exactly like in the dream. Even the words Moraine said were the same. Rand realized that the Dark One was more powerful than he thought. At this moment, the roar of monsters rang out in the distance, signaling that the monster army was attacking the fortress. The two were forced to speed up. Not long after, they finally reached the eye of the world, where the Dark One was being held. After going down to the bottom of the pit, they saw a giant portal in the shape of a polarity. Rand felt something calling him from below. As soon as Rand touched it, he was immediately transported back to the small house in Two Rivers, where he had a happy family. Although Rand knew it was all an illusion, he did not want to break this dream. Here Egwene also appeared so real that she knew every detail of their relationship and gave Rand a very real feeling. This made him fall deeper into the illusion. But soon, Egwene and their child became motionless. It turned out that it was all a scheme of the Dark One. He used this illusion of happiness to lure Rand. Dark One promised that if Rand wanted, everything could become a reality. In reality, Dark One also approached Moraine. She tried to use magic to solve it. From now on, Moraine was just a normal person, but she never fought without preparation. If Rand chose the darkness, she would personally kill him. At the same time, in the city, everyone finally realized the approaching danger. The Lord ordered his subordinates to take secret weapons, and he would lead the army to hold the defense line in Fal Dara. With just one command from him, more than 1,000-strong cavalry troops were ready to fight. The task of defending the city was assigned to the Lord's sister, who was once an Aes Sedai. Nynaeve and Egwene also joined this formation. If he failed, they would do their best to prevent the faceless army from entering the city. At this time, the monster army had arrived at the gates of Fal Dara. Following the command of the faceless, all the monsters rushed towards the city wall, while the Lord's army was ready to fight. A signal was given, and countless arrows were shot out onto the battlefield, raining down on the monsters. The battle lasted until evening. Although the humans occupied an advantageous position, the number of monsters was truly too great. They climbed the city wall by building human ladders. When the city lord was changing his sword, a monster created a long spear and nailed the city lord to the wall. The lord suffered casualties, and Fal Dara officially fell. The monster army flooded into the city like a flood. The lord's sister hurriedly gathered the heavenly spirit power and created a magic circle to prepare for a counterattack. When the faceless army was approaching, the humans also used their ultimate power to summon lightning from the sky. A powerful blow to the army of monsters quickly killed them. Although this move was very effective, it required too much energy. One woman was already burning from concentrating too much energy. If this continued, everyone would be burned. However, Amalisa could not stop at this time. Very quickly, another person fell. Nynaeve and Egwene could not bear it either, but the energy continued to pour in. Nynaeve could not stand to see Egwene die, so she absorbed all of Egwene's energy into her body. But this also accelerated Nynaeve's burning process. At this moment, Amalisa finally stopped, but it was too late. Of the last 5, only Egwene survived. Although the monsters in Fal Dara had been destroyed, the danger on the other side of the city had just begun. Padan Fain led the ghost monsters into the city. They came to find the secret weapon of the Lord of Valyra, the trumpeter. Just blow the trumpet in the final battle, the greatest hero in the legend will appear and fight with them. This is equivalent to the resurrection technique in Naruto, but this technique can only be used on dragons. However, before they could use the trumpet, Padan Fain and the ghosts had already destroyed the entire group. But at this time, he still could not kill Perrin, because Perrin, Egwene, Nynaeve, and Mat were all important characters playing a vital role in the time loop. All 4 of them had to survive. Nynaeve was also revived thanks to Egwene's efforts, but Mat had joined the Dark One's side. At the same time, the Dark One was manipulating Rand. If Rand took one more step, the Dark One would regain his freedom, but Rand suddenly focused all his intelligence on magic. Thanks to the last bit of reason, Rand escaped the net that the Dark One had meticulously carved. Rand then uses energy-pushing magic to destroy the Dark One. However, Dark One revealed a meaningful expression. Rand thought he had succeeded, but he still couldn't be happy. Rand felt crazy power in his body. He was afraid that one day he would be swallowed by Dark One and harm the people he loved. So Rand asked Moiraine to tell everyone that he was dead. After that, Rand quietly left and disappeared without a trace. Moiraine looked at this marble and felt that things captors would not end so simply. The video ends here. Please like and subscribe to support us. Goodbye, and see you again in the next videos.